Hey guys, Coach Casey here. We are going to jump in and do a semi-quick tutorial on some of these dog training collars. Um, I'm constantly seeing them used improperly. They don't come with instructions, right? I mean, if you go to the store, you can either pick one up off the shelf yourself, or you might even have a retail associate or something who doesn't know much either hand you the one that they think you should use. You know what I mean? Doesn't come with any instructions on how they should be fit, how they should be worn, how often they should be used, all that kind of stuff. So that's what I want to talk about today, guys. And it's basically around the four collars that I use um, through all phases of training. And it's basically starting at the very basic, which is a buckle collar. I'm gonna show you pictures of each and show you how I use them and wear them, how I fit them, and all that kind of stuff. But it's a buckle collar, a martingale collar, and then I call it a training collar. You may refer to it as a choke chain. I don't use them anymore, but I am going to include that in this tutorial for those of you who do wear them, because there's a reason they're called, or they've been coined choke chains. So, awareness needs to be around that collar as well. Then we'll go into the pinch prong collar. And, I want to preface all of this by saying that I am a balanced trainer. The more I train, and I'm going on close to 30 years now, um, it definitely, I do everything I can to find the positive and the good, and kind of roll with that energy. But all dogs are different, all situations are different, and I've always told myself, and I'll never be one of those type trainers that says, "Look, this is how I train." I use all these tools. I think they're all phenomenal tools in the right hands. Now they can all be abused, right? So that's why there needs to be awareness with all these tools. I am a firm believer on, I train the personality in the dog, and, not just the breed or just the dog. And that's where a lot of people, they get hung up on that. But when you get in that level and you start training the personalities of these dogs, you need different tools. Some dogs are soft, submissive. Some dogs are a little bit harder, they can have aggressive tendencies, dominant tendencies. You just don't, high energy, low energy. They're all over the spectrum within every breed. And that's what a lot of people won't understand that either. So, a lot of times you would think, well, pinch collar, prong collar, that's probably got to be on a Rottweiler. You would never see one on a Chihuahua, right? That's kind of our society's perception, but that could be, farther from the truth. You know what I mean? There's a reason why a lot of these Chihuahuas, the bite statistics are up, is because they're not having training collars put on them. And instead of, the behaviors are coddled all the time. So that's just kind of my point. It's easy for people to look at things and kind of just use perception. You know what I mean? Ooh, Rottweiler, big dog, Mastiff, pinch collar, small dog, toy poodle, Chihuahua, that kind of thing. Now, I should say I've never honestly had to use or used a pinch collar on a toy poodle. Those are usually very soft, very easy training. I'm talking about more like Chihuahuas, Dachshunds, some of those breeds you get in there, and even though they're small, doesn't mean anything. They're still thinking the exact same way a 200 pound dog is, but we tend to see size as humans, and we try to, you know, decide what collar goes on which dog by size. So let me jump in, guys, instead of rambling on, but I'm gonna start at the lowest end, which is a buckle collar. And this is the way I train too. Every dog that starts with me starts with a buckle collar. I don't ever say, go get this collar, I'll meet you there, and this is how it starts. Because how am I to who I don't know your dog yet. I don't know the personality. You probably don't even know the personality, though. So to say, this collar goes on every dog I train, or to sign up or even enroll, you guys may have done this. Have you enrolled into training and everyone in class or everyone there has the same collar on? That might be a sign that that trainer was trying to get your dog to fit into their training approach instead of catering their training approach to fit your dog's personality. See the difference? It's key. So this is a buckle collar. We've all seen these, right? This is a small one. This is something you'd find on a toy breed. And I've trained hundreds of dogs right here, just on this. Good enough. This is a buckle collar as well, but just a bigger version. It's basically it's the pet collar. Things you'd find in any department store, pet stores, your Walmarts. You can get to anything that has a pet department, you can find a buckle collar. And again, I've trained hundreds of dogs on these collars right here. treats, a leash, and this, the off-leash levels. Now, with that said, some dogs you need to step out of that collar and step into the next one. And what I do is when I'm working with a dog and we're into a situation where we're needing some of that, we're into a reinforcing phase. If you guys follow my videos about the 6 phases of training, if not, go check those out. But if you follow me and you know that I go through 6 phases, when we get into a reinforcing phase and even more so a proofing phase, some of these collars and tools change on you. And that's what you need to understand. And you can't be afraid to go from one to the other and back to that. And if your training approach is catered that way, and that's the way all the training I do with clients, what we say and do does not change. The tool can bounce around back and forth, but that's how you get that versatility, and you can, you know what I mean, really accelerate your training, because what you say and what you do doesn't change, but the way you apply it might change, if that makes sense. So let me jump in. Like I said, guys, buckle collars, right? If your dog's blowing this off, and again, this is not even a training collar, but if you got a good technique, and that's what a lot of this is, just comes down to your leash techniques, your collar techniques, and all that. If you have a good correction technique and you really know how to apply a correction, you can use these. When you don't, there's other tools that they've come up with to kind of even the score, if that makes sense. And I always talk, we'll get to this one in a minute, but just briefly, like these ugly pinch prong collars. I tell people, these are fantastic collars in the right hands. But what happens, why these are so popular, is because it allows you, the dog owner, to lack that technique I was just talking about and still be effective. That's why they're popular. Bingo. So if you practice on your technique, you don't need those type collars. But when your technique's not there, you do for certain dogs. Okay, so again, buckle collar was first. When a buckle collar doesn't work, then we step into what I call a martingale, or what they call a martingale. But this is the type of martingale I like. It's got small links on it. Listen, you hear that? That's what you're basically telling your dog, pay attention, pay attention. That's all this is for. It's not about being harsh or being mean. It's you ask them to do something and they knew how to do it, but they insisted on not doing it. Instead, you maybe go, no, sit. That's a negative reinforcement. And like I said, it's not about being heavy-handed or harsh. It's about just putting things in black and white. When I ask you to do something, you do it. Oh, that's a good girl. Get the treat out, praise, positive reinforcement. But if I ask you to do something and I know you know it, and you just look at me like I'm stupid, or you know what I mean, that's where you have to move into a reinforcement. So no, sit. Okay, there you go. You know what I mean? Just let them know that you can make them do things. And that's basically what this is about. Again, you want to do it in the right way. I try to keep everything positive. I don't ever let emotions come out when you're using these. If you're having a bad day, guys, put training on hold. You don't ever take your argument with your spouse or your girlfriend or your boyfriend out on your dog by, oh, I'm going to go train. And you don't even realize it, but you know what I mean? If you're having a bad day, just pass. Because this is always about being fun. It's always about being positive. What I'm talking about with these collars, you can insert these in places that help you get through the 6 phases, if that makes sense. And there's different spots. The first one is usually a reinforcing phase. They're going to start blowing off just a verbal no, which most dogs would when you get into distractions, right? So then you start getting into collars. Blowing off the buckle collar, okay, let's go into a martingale collar. They start blowing this off, then like I said, then we'll step into the next one. But let me quickly show you how this can be used the wrong way. All right, so when this is on the dog, when you apply this, you should hear that, right? But what happens, I've seen with these martingales a lot of times, people will put these on some of the stronger dogs and they'll pull through it and basically kind of stretch it back out. And then what happens, so if you hook your leash right here, you see that? Oops. See that, guys? If you hook your leash right here and you get that correction, that's what you want. But if you hook your leash and you do this and see these 2 tabs right here, see them? If they're touching again, you're back to buckle collar. No different. See the difference? You might think you're using a martingale collar, but if you got it on too big, you're back to a buckle. So what you have to do is make sure, you might have to take this, back off them because they pulled it and stretched it out a little bit and tighten it up. Make sure you got a good fit. Fit is everything in these training collars, guys. If you don't know how to fit them and use them, it's a big swing and a miss. So that's your martingale. So we have your buckle collars. Martingale. Now, if I'm training with you and we're using this martingale, let's say we've rolled through the learning phase, we're in the reinforcing phase, the dog's rocking and rolling, we get into proofing, the dog's still doing fantastic. Now we get out into a park, a reality scenario, and all of a sudden, no sit, the dog's just blowing this off. Basically, what they're saying is that, hey, if your correction's there and the collar's not working, this is how I do it. I step into the next collar. And what that would be is this, if I still use it. Again, I know I said in the beginning that I don't use these, and I don't. I basically anymore will go from a Martingale to a 2.25 Herm Springer, not any bigger. And I'll explain that when I get to this collar, but this is the next one I go to. But since so many people are using these, let me show you kind of do's and don'ts with it because it's important. So this is known as, I call this a training collar. You probably refer to it as a choke chain, and I want to show you why here in a second. But most people would think you can only put this on one way, right? I mean, it's just a chain. But look at the difference between doing this. You see what letter that makes? That's making a Q. You want to make it, see how that's making a P? It's a lowercase p. I'm not real good at making the letters there, but that's a P, right? So if you put it on your dog as it makes a P, like if this is their muzzle, you slide it over just like that. Look, when you give these, when you put your leash right here, watch what happens to this part right here. See how that breaks away? I can do it. It doesn't matter how hard I do it. It's going to break away. And that's what you want. If you make a P and you place it over the dog's muzzle, look, I'll take it back off the same way. Can you see what I'm talking about there? It made a P. It's very easy, look, to make a Q. Put it back over your dog exactly. You think it's the same way. Can you see the Q now instead of the P? Now watch. Now if you put your leash here, and that's kind of where you get that term choke chain. And it can be dangerous, right? How many of you knew that? How many of you didn't? And that's why I wanted to explain. Most people, when looking at this, they think it's all the same. But you can actually put it on this way or this way. See the difference? This way or this way. And one way is a fantastic training tool. The other way could be deadly, to be honest. So that's why these honestly get a bad rap, is because of the lack of awareness. And that's why I really don't even use them anymore. A Martingale, I can do fantastic with that. If I need to step out of the Martingale, I usually just bypass this because of the lack of awareness and people don't understand how they're used. And I just go straight to this. Okay, so now let me jump into this one. This is the collar that, people say, oh my gosh, you got a pinch collar or a prong collar on your dog. And usually it goes back to a lack of awareness. They don't know. They don't know what you're dealing with. They don't know what you needed for your dog. They don't know what your dog needs. You know what I mean? It's their opinion. They're trying to put it on you. So first of all, just when someone sees it, says something, just say, you know what? I got this under control. And then you can go on to explain what I'm about to explain to you if you'd like, because that's usually when people go, oh, okay, I didn't know that. So this is what we call a pinch prong collar, right? It looks like a medieval torture device, right? And I get it, and it's ugly. And you can go online and search horrible pictures of this grown into dogs' necks. And that goes back to me saying every one of these can be abused. But you can also go back and search all the phenomenal success stories found with this collar too. So whatever you want to find on the internet, you can, is my point. So if you're one of those that says, oh, I've seen the images of that, well, I can find any images online, is my point. This is a fantastic tool in the right hands. It could be abused, right? This is not a collar to leave on a dog unattended. None of these are, except for the buckle collars. Okay, if you can't stay with your dog, I don't recommend leaving anything on except a buckle collar. So back to the pinch collar. This is the ideal way it's supposed to be worn on your. Some people slide these on and off their dog's neck with the lack of awareness. That is not how that works. Look, these pop on and off. Look, so I come in, I put it around the dog's neck. See how that's on the bottom? I come to the top and I clip it back in. Bam. Now the prongs are up here, right? That's the grabbing the dog by the scruff. That's how mom carries her litter. That's how litter mates play. This is what happens. It's not a big deal for these to be up here. And that's exactly why. Look at this again. See this? See how it's flat? it can kind of pull back and forth like that. That's because this is supposed to stay down here on the trachea. Look, nothing to injure or go into the throat. This is only supposed to say, hey, pay attention. Hey, pay attention on the scruff of the neck. And that's the way they're supposed to be designed. But they're not. You know why? It's because, for one, they're being worn too big. If this is properly fitted, it's up on the ears, and the right amount of links are taken out. Look, I can take one of these out just as easy. See, pop that out, pop another one in. See, it's a little bit smaller. And so what you do is you wear it up on the ears and tight enough that this part stays down on the throat. Bam. You can put your leash here, you can do anything you want with your leash. This just stays up here and says, hey, pay attention, pay attention. And that's all we're trying to do. And we use this with that no, verbal no, sit, no, pay, you know what I mean? And when you get into distractions, it makes a big difference. Here's what people are doing though. If I was to fit this on your dog and then walk away and you didn't know that I fitted it properly and it's the way it's supposed to be, you'd come up to it and go, oh my God, that's so tight. So you take this back off. You'd add all kind of links to it, which you can. That's why these are made like this. You can add links, take them out. I use this one size on the largest of breeds, by the way. I have a French Mastiff right now wearing one of these, and we had to add 8 links. But to me, they're more effective than moving into any other pinch collars. It's a small. So what I was saying is that you can pop these out, pop them in, and have the right size, right? So many people have these too big because they took, they said, oh my God, that's too tight. So they add all these links. Guess what that does? They added the links in, but now the collar, whoop, shifts around. They have their leash up here, but look what's on their throat. All day long. Bam, 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 on their throat. See the difference? So properly worn, fantastic tool and in the right hands. And that's why I wanted to kind of, throw this video together, because between the 3 collars, my word, I mean, between the Martingale being too big and they're pulling through it and you just have a buckle collar on, to the choke chain being on backwards, to the pinch collar being on too big. Can you see how there's, a lack of control out there and just a lack of awareness? I hope that makes a lot of sense, guys. But basically what it comes down to is nothing changes if nothing changes. And if you want change, you need to, some kind of a 6-step, 6-phase system in your dog where they understand exactly what's going on. I'm going to drop that link in the comments below. I'll pin that comment. It's a direct link to my website. It's a video of me just like this going through my 6 phases. And at the end, I'll tell you there's a link there where you can apply to work with me. And I'll show you exactly how to use all these tools in the right scenario. You know what I mean? A lot of my clients have multiple collars like this because you should. There's no reason that around the house that, dog wears this all the time. Uh-oh, we're going to the park. While you're in training, once you get to a certain point in training, which is I call the finish line, and we're into maintenance phase, which is the 6th phase. Now you can kind of go back to a buckle collar and you put in the work. You and your dog, you're there. Now just maintain, you have a buckle collar, true off-leash dog, because you did it step by step in the right way. All right, guys, so be sure to check out that comment below. Hit that link. Go check out that short video. I'm telling you, you'll love it. Until next time, Coach Casey.